Welcome to the Joey Awaken Podcast. Today we have the privilege of introducing David Figueroa, a highly accomplished motivational speaker, advocate, educator, and athlete. Despite facing challenges associated with his cerebral palsy, David has embraced his condition, becoming a beacon of inspiration and hope. Welcome, David, to the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Then thank you for having me on, Joey. I'm definitely excited to share my knowledge and my wisdom to your audience, and hopefully by the end of it, they'll be empowered to achieve their goals and their dreams themselves.
Could you share a significant childhood memory that shaped your perspective on overcoming obstacles?
So a lot of my childhood was pretty much, going back and forth between Puerto Rico and Florida. Of course, I had both parents, mom and dad. They were wonderful. My biological mom, had me at a very early age. She was 16 years old when she had me. And as you know, you're practically a child, raising a kid with a disability, and you have no idea what to do.
Hmm.
So during the first few years, it was very rough on her. She didn't really have much of an idea. Of course, my dad was there, and they were kind of both trying to figure things out. And then my brother was born 2 years later. So you're talking about, now you have not just me, but my younger brother. And then you have to think, what else am I going to have to do? And then after those, after a couple years of going, to Florida and Puerto Rico, eventually my mom and my dad, they went their separate ways, but they remained friends. Then my stepmom came into the picture. And she's the one that kind of was like the one that would drill my mom and tell her, hey, you got to take your son to therapy. You got to take your son to all these appointments, take him to school.
Hmm.
And it was kind of like a moment where you have three different parents, and they're all supporting you and guiding you in different ways. And that's just kind of how that was the beginning of what kind of constructed my way of trying to overcome that cerebral palsy, that motivational push at
Hmm.
the very beginning.
How did growing up with cerebral palsy influence your mindset and drive you to succeed?
A lot of it was, uh, of course, I'll go back to my stepmom again. She would always tell me at the beginning of every school year, take 5 or 10 minutes of your time and talk to your peers about what you have. How does it make you different and unique? But how, in a sense, you're just like the peers in your classroom. Because a lot of the times, when you walk a certain way, you talk a certain way, and you do things differently, kids tend to push you away because you're different. They
Hmm.
tend to exclude you from a lot of activities. But with me, it was different because I would talk to the kids on the first day. I'm like, I have this, I deal with this. Sure, it takes me 5, 10 minutes. It could take me an hour to do stuff, but at the end of the day, I get it done just like you, or I'll do this activity just like you. It just takes me a bit longer.
Hmm.
And it's about education. Education is key. That's the key word because a lot of people don't realize, if you have a disability and you don't speak out about it, people are not going to learn.
Hmm.
People are not going to
Hmm.
understand, and they're
Right.
still going to treat you like you don't know anything. Like when people approach me, like as a kid, they would think, "Oh, he's got a physical disability," but because it's physical, it also has to be mental. You know, he's probably like at the lowest of the low in education. He probably can't read, write, or walk, which is funny enough. Growing up, I was told by I would never read, write, walk, live a normal life. I would be a vegetable for the rest of my life in a wheelchair. Would never be able to do any of those things. And yet here I am today on your podcast, being able to share my knowledge and my story with all of you.
Can you explain to the viewers what is cerebral palsy?
So cerebral palsy, it's there's a lot of different types of cerebral palsy. So with me, I was born 4 months premature, and cerebral palsy is caused due to lack of oxygen to the brain.
Mm-hmm.
So while at birth, my mom had some complications, and so I was born via cesarean C-section. So they had to,
Mm-hmm.
cut my mom open and get me out. A lot of people say you're so nosy, you just want to be out in the world early. I'm like, so
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah. I mean, and because of the lack of oxygen, it caused my progression growing up to be a lot slower.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was in the hospital for 3 months, practically fighting for my life on a ventilator because my lungs were fully developed.
Hmm.
And picture yourself holding a water bottle. Hold that water bottle up and take a look at it. And that's how big I was.
Mm-hmm.
I could
Hmm.
fit in my grandpa's palm, and my diaper was bigger than me. I mean,
Hmm.
I got to be honest. I look at alien. I mean, I look back at pictures. I'm like, that was me. I looked hideous.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as far as cerebral was concerned, I was a spastic quadriplegic. So what that means is I deal with my body. The muscles have to work 3 times as harder. I expend 3 times as much energy to do everyday tasks. Sometimes I'll have back
Mm-hmm.
spasms where my back gets shot and I have to be laying down for periods of time and trying to massage it and physical therapy all the time. And it's difficult at times, but luckily with the changes in technology and medicine, I've been able
Mm-hmm.
to overcome that. And you know, and quadriplegic meaning, for me it was all 4 limbs. I was affected by all 4 limbs, and I've had about 10 surgeries throughout my lifetime to be able to walk
Hmm.
now.
Wow. So what did the doctor say? Like, did they give you um different kinds of limitations that they say you wouldn't be able to do as you get older?
Oh, um, well, recently, let's say about 2, 3 years ago, I was told, if I didn't start wearing the braces, which I usually wear now, um, I could lose ability of my from my my knees. Wouldn't be able to,
Hmm.
because I tend to crouch a lot, and all that
Mm-hmm.
weight goes in that area. So
Mm-hmm.
I had to make that change recently. And if you're talking about further back, um, I was at a doctor's appointment. This was years ago, and I was told by a doctor, if you
Mm-hmm.
don't change your sedentary lifestyle, you're gonna end up back in the wheelchair. So I told myself I got to get myself into gear, and I started lifting weights, getting involved in the gym. Of course, I did sports before that, but I wasn't really very fitness oriented, not like now. Um, and I actually took my first steps walking when I was
Hmm.
8 years old, 3 months after my actual mom passed away. And this will shock you, but she was only 23.
Hmm.
And I can share with you what happened. So I just found this out months ago. How my mom actually passed away finally after so many years of trying to figure it out. She overdosed on pain medication accidentally. She had missed a dose, and she's like, "I'm fine. I'll take it the next day." She took it the next day. She was completely fine. A couple hours later, they found her passed away. And my brother
Wow.
actually told me this. He's like, "Do you know how mom died?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "Mom had an overdose." And I'm like, "I kind of knew it because I was speculating it for years, knowing that she had been through a lot of pain and a lot of trauma."
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, but it felt good to finally have an answer.
Can you describe a pivotal moment or a turning point when you decided to become a motivational speaker and advocate?
Well, for me, it started back in 2017. I was, just graduated college, and I told myself I'll overcome all these obstacles throughout my life. Learning how to walk, getting through the education system, uh, facing bullying, and learning how to advocate for myself. And I told myself, you know what? I have something really interesting to share. I have an amazing story. And I began speaking at my old university. I graduated from UCF back in 2016.
Hmm.
That was the very first appearance I made. And for me, at first, it was very scary because I wasn't used to speaking in front of a crowd, and I was a mess. And
Hmm.
by the end of it, I had a lot of support. And I told myself, you know what? This isn't so bad. And now I'm used to being in front of a camera and sharing my journey and seeing people so excited and seeing them motivated themselves to want to be successful too, despite what challenges they face in their life.
What were some initial challenges you faced when starting your career as a speaker, and how did you overcome them?
A lot of it is being real shaky, being real shaky in front of an audience speaking, maintaining eye contact, um, not being so fidgety. Because you get really nervous in front of a crowd and you start kind of doing, all these usual emotions that you don't tend to do, but it just pops out of nowhere. Um,
Hmm.
One thing I would do is to remind myself before every appearances. Sure, things might go wrong, things might go awry, but everybody goes through those things. And
Hmm.
and if they're there, there's a reason for it. It's because they
Hmm.
believe in you and they want to see you. They want to see you speak. Because if they were to see you fidget and move and they got really bothered by it, they could have just left. But no, they didn't leave you. They stayed with you,
Hmm.
obviously, you know?
How have your experiences as a person with cerebral palsy influenced your approach to education and your role as an advocate?
Well, a lot of the kids, like we had mentioned earlier off air, are the kids that I work with are middle school kids.
Hmm.
So a lot of the kids that I want to work with are kids that have had that were always getting into trouble, fights, suspensions, referrals,
Hmm.
tardies, kids that are from broken homes, that
Hmm. Hmm.
the parents aren't really there at home, and a lot of the kids that have self-esteem issues, so they don't really believe in themselves. And a lot of those
Hmm.
kids, I for one, I don't know about you, but I'm a tough love kind of guy. Like I would go to the middle school kids I used to work with. I'll be like, I don't have any
Hmm.
kids, but you're my kids, and I'm responsible for you. So if
Hmm.
you decide to want to mess around and mess up, you know I'm gonna find out. And they'll be like, no, you're not, Mr. David. I'm like,
Right.
I'm gonna find out because I'm like
Hmm.
that. I'll find out before your parents.
Hmm.
So I need you to shape up. I believe in you. I was always tell these kids, I always drill it in them is, I believe in you. I know you can do this. I know things are hard, but you're gonna get through it. And
Hmm.
some of these kids, they would look at me but they don't mess with me though. But they see other kids messing
Hmm.
with me on campus, they'll be trying to first. Okay, so first things first, like when I used to teach and I used to,
Hmm.
be around my kids and stuff, they'll be like, we will walk into class together, just doing our thing and me talking to them. And then they overhear another kid making fun of me. And they're like, don't you make fun of Mr. David like that? And they'll try to run over the kid, trying to give him a
Hmm.
little, little taste of their own medicine. I'm like, don't you go there and try to
Yeah.
resolve with your fist and violence. That's not how you do it. But Mr. David,
Hmm.
I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, they make fun of me. You don't solve
Hmm.
things by violence. Leave it alone. Leave it alone. But that shows how much these kids care. Once they learn about me, just like I told you with the kids that I spoke with about my disability early on, it's the same thing in adulthood. But the difference is when you're talking to kids, you got to try to speak to them on their level in a way that they understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Because, these kids aren't going to understand big terms like cerebral palsy and stuff unless you break it down to them. You know, with adults,
Mm-hmm.
it's also different. Adults are like, you expect them to
Mm-hmm.
already know better not to make fun of kids with disabilities, but or
Mm-hmm.
adults for that matter. But hey, I don't let it get to me anymore like I used to.
So, can you share a specific instance where you witnessed firsthand the impact of your advocacy work on someone's life?
I was actually a few years ago speaking at this middle school that I was working at. Actually, they did a teaching day, and I spoke to this class of about 20 students and sharing my story with them, sharing my journey. At the end of it, they did an evaluation of how I did as a speaker, but I couldn't see the evaluations. But then
Mm-hmm.
there was this one child in the back of the room who literally said, "I want Mr. David to see this," and he would walk up to me and he would show me, and he's like,
Mm-hmm.
"Mr. David, before you came in, I was so depressed, dealing with self-esteem issues, and I have a mental disability myself. But seeing you up here and being confident showed me that I can be confident too, and I can believe in myself. So thank you." And this was sixth grader. We're talking about a kid that's
Mm-hmm.
a 12 years old. To
Mm-hmm.
tell you that you empowered them to
Mm-hmm.
want to speak to others and to believe in
Mm-hmm.
themselves. That's huge.
It is. What inspired you to create a podcast, cerebral palsy and fitness, and how has it grown into the platform for others to share their story?
Well, for me, I kind of started the podcast as to kind of share my own personal journey of living with
Mm-hmm.
cerebral palsy. And I would talk about what it was like growing up, you know, what what it was like going through education, um, anything I would use as far as like adaptive devices like earphones, my cane, my walker, and
Mm-hmm.
why I specifically use those things, and my involvement in sports. In three different sports, I played baseball for 8 years, did football as a center running back, and like I mentioned earlier, I was a three-time state champion cyclist as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually I was like, you know what? Enough talking about myself. Let's open it up to people who have their own journeys, whether disability or not, and give a platform where it's judgment free, where they can speak and no one here judges them.
Right.
Because a lot of days in society nowadays, there's a lot of judging, and it's way too much. It's gotten out of
Mm-hmm.
hand. And this platform
Mm-hmm.
is just a way for people to express themselves, and there's no judgment here involved. I've had people with disabilities. I've had people with different genders and all ethnicities and backgrounds, and it's so
Mm-hmm.
amazing to learn about each and every one of them.
So you say you are a three times state champion of what again?
Of cycling, bicycling.
Okay, so you were premature when you were a baby. Doctor says you will have all kinds of limitations. I'm sure they say you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't walk, you can't.
Yep.
And someone with cerebral palsy won three-time state champion. You said cycling.
Yep.
You are a person of resilience, of empowerment. You know how many people out there complain about getting up every day and throwing out the garbage? People
Oh yeah, a
complain
lot of people.
about they can't get a job, that whatever the case may be, and you have cerebral palsy and you still find the confidence to get up every day and achieve and be successful at everything you do. We put our own limitations. Anything is possible. All it takes is hard work and dedication. Obviously, this is what you're showing me here, that with everything that you're going through, with everything that you have physically, you still get up every day and do what you have to do without no complaints. See, to me, that's something big. To me, that's not something small. You know what I mean? That's huge.
I mean, you're talking about also a guy who during the course of my time going through the education system was
Hmm.
pretty much told by teachers he was too slow. I don't want him in my
Hmm.
classroom. He's never
Wow.
gonna really amount to anything. And I ended up being the first in my family to graduate college. And
There you. Wow.
and my mom never got to my biological mom never got to go to college, and
Hmm.
because she passed away early. And my brother, he self-made himself. He became successful himself, but he never went to college either. So I became
Hmm.
the first one, and the one that everybody never thought was gonna make it.
Right.
And I
You
remember
proved
I
them
remember
wrong.
that day vividly. You know, I remember
Hmm.
that day vividly because my family from Puerto Rico called me on the phone. They're like, Felicidades, and we're so proud of you, and this and that. I get to the arena, and they're there, my whole family.
Wow.
And they came from Puerto Rico, and I'm like, they're from Puerto Rico and they're Boricua, because my
Hmm.
uncle came dressed in a button down shirt and a
Hmm.
hat,
Hmm.
wearing boots,
Hmm.
wearing jeans, and you see everybody else like real dressed up and everything, and then my grandparents came, and it was a surreal moment, having them there. And um mind you, I was dealing with a night with a fever because I was real sick, because after
Hmm.
finals my body just decided to give out, because you're
Hmm.
done, it's over.
Hmm.
And man, I remember that day waking up in the morning, looking at the mirror, telling myself you did it. But it didn't hit me till I was close to walking up the stage when they asked me, do you want to go up the ramp, or do you want to walk up the stairs? And I told them, at the time I was turning 25, and I said, I waited 17 long years for this moment,
Hmm.
and no one is going to take this away from me now. So I remember giving the cane to somebody, walking up on the stage, and it got real quiet, and I'm like, if I can just hear my family cheer, it's an accomplishment. You could hear a pen drop on the floor. That's how quiet it got.
Hmm.
And within 5 minutes, I shook the dean's hand. I lifted up that can in the air, and that place, we're talking about 10,000 people. That place erupted. I mean,
Hmm.
erupted,
Can
and
only
they
imagine.
had to stop. They had to stop the commencement for 5 minutes because it got so
Hmm.
loud. And I just stood there and just cherished the moment. And
Oh, most
there was
definitely.
a lot of tears, and then and I I did it. It's a moment that I said I did it. Everybody told me I couldn't do it, but I did it. I would wake up because I couldn't drive, so I would wake up at 4:30 in the morning just to take a bus for 3 hours to get to
Hmm.
school and be at school from 7 to about 8 o'clock at night,
Hmm.
twice a week, plus all the studying, all the long hours
Wow.
that I took. And what motivated me was I took all that pressure. I took everything, all the hate, all the negativity, my family, my friends, put them all on my shoulders. And I said, we're doing this together. And whether I make it or not, we're going to make this happen.
Hmm.
And I went through it every day, every single day for 4 years. And I did it.
All of this is nothing but a testament to your to your determination and dedication, man. You know, you definitely got my respect. I know so many people, they always put in excuses. They complain, I can't go back to school. I can't do this. And you were a three-time state champion cycling. You graduated college. I mean, it seems that you're unstoppable. You got a podcast. You're a motivational speaker, advocate. You're here to empower everyone, especially those who have disabilities, and you know, you motivate them to understand that anything is possible. As long as you put your mind to it, you stay focused, anything is possible.
It really is, man. Like I'm grateful and humbled every day when someone messages me or listens to the podcast or listens to your podcast and listens to our episode. Honestly, honestly, at the end of the day, you have to be grateful and blessed for what you have because honestly, if it wasn't for my stepmom and my dad, of course, I wouldn't be here today because my stepmom is the one that was able to push me uh, to be successful in education, and she was my
Hmm.
advocate, and
Hmm.
seeing her being my advocate made me want to be an advocate for other people as I got older because she taught me to be an advocate. She taught me
Hmm.
to advocate for myself,
Hmm.
and I chose to give that gift of advocacy to others now
Hmm.
as an adult.
As an individual with various roles, how do you manage to balance your speaking engagements, advocacy work, education, and personal life?
Oh man, the one thing I like to tell people is I just go 100 miles an hour. I go nonstop. Like you gotta
Mm.
keep the foot on the gas and keep on going. No matter what. No matter if things get harder at first. Of course, you gotta take time for yourself. There's times where I take breaks in between, but I just love what I
Mhm.
do. I'm passionate, and as long as that passion's still there, I'm still gonna continue doing all these things. You know.
Mhm. Mhm. What have been some of the most rewarding moments or achievements in your speaking career so far?
Well, my most rewarding achievements have been I was able to meet one of my commissioners here in Orlando, and I got to working with them on several projects related to disability, and because before or while I was teaching, I also worked with the city of Orlando, so I got to meet him through while I was working there and make that connection. Of course, shout out to
Mhm.
Commissioner Ortiz. He's also Latino, so we
Mhm.
made things happen. And I told him I'm glad we met, and he also had a family member with cerebral palsy. And eventually, we're going to have a proclamation done to proclaim World Cerebral Palsy Day as a day in Orlando.
Mm.
Because you hear about mental health, you hear about
Mhm.
all these different disabilities, but you never hear about cerebral palsy, which is the most common disability in the US. But we are
Mhm.
overlooked, and I want to try and change that. Whether it's one city
Mhm.
at a time, one state at a time, or even one country at a time. I want to be able to bring awareness about it and how important it is for people with cerebral palsy to be recognized for who they are as well.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, you definitely got my support on that. I think
And
you're
then
going to get
also,
far with that.
this
Mhm.
June, I'll be taking the podcast over to St. Augustine because I'll be at the River City Wrestling Convention, interviewing some of the
Okay.
biggest names in professional wrestling. So we're talking about Mick Foley, Lita, Trish,
Mm.
Sting. I'll get the chance to interview them on my podcast. Have a quick chat and a quick conversation, and get to meet some of my idols that I used to watch when I was a kid. And now, as an adult, I'm still
Mm.
a fan. I'm not ashamed of it, but hey. Getting to meet your idols is awesome.
In your experience, how does sharing your personal journey and triumphs help to inspire and empower others facing challenges in their lives?
It's all about perception, how you see things, how you look at things. Um, I would always tell people, if you look at something negative, you're going to see negativity around you. But if you look at something
Hmm.
positive, you're going to see positivity around you. And it's the same thing with the people you hang out with. If you hang out with gangbangers and people that do drugs and get into trouble, you're more than likely going to follow that path. Then you're going to get involved in it.
Hmm. Hmm.
But it's up to you to follow that path or not follow it. You have to make that decision for yourself. I mean, I tell people I can guide you, but I can't make that decision for you. You got to make that on your own.
Hmm.
Like if you hang out with positive people like myself, you're guaranteed to do well in life because I
Hmm.
can guide you in that direction. But
Right.
it's up to you to make that decision.
True. Looking ahead, what are your aspirations and goals for the future, both in terms of your advocacy work and personal growth?
Well, for me, first and foremost is to finally be able to do the podcast full time. That's one of my future goals, and to be able to do motivational speaking full time.
Hmm.
And every time I meet somebody new, whether online or in person, they teach you about yourself, a little bit about yourself each and every day, as much as you learn
Hmm.
about them. You don't grow by yourself. You grow by experiences, by the people around you,
Hmm.
by what you see, what you do, um, things you go through. That to me signifies growth. What you encompass in your life, what you deal with in your life, that's how you grow.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Well, hopefully, being able to interview people like yourself full time every day, getting to meet people, traveling all across the U.S. And one of the things that I really want to do is that I would love to
Hmm.
do a podcast in Puerto Rico, all Spanish.
Mm.
Just in Spanish. Reach out to one of the news stations, and I'd love to speak. In
Yeah,
front of
that's
my
what's up.
hometown.
That's what's up.
I would love to do that. That's one thing that it still is on my bucket list. Because I mean, right now, my current job, I work at a rheumatology office, serving as a
Hmm.
translator and a patient and a service rep for patients with rheumatoid arthritis. So,
Hmm.
and it's real pretty rewarding. The main social platforms you can look me up are Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, uh, TikTok, and basically you can also find me on my YouTube channel if you aren't subscribed to it. It's David Cerebral Palsy and Fitness channel, as the banner in the back says. You guys can subscribe to that. You can also email me directly. And if you guys would like my email, I'm be happy to share that with you. Just shoot me a message at one of the platforms, and if you guys are interested in being on the show, definitely reach out to me. And I'm truly grateful to be on here today.
Well, David, I appreciate you taking the time to being a guest on this podcast. I'm sure that a lot of people will be inspired, motivated, especially when they have um, a family member who has cerebral palsy and can also relate. You have a powerful, impactful story, and blessings to you, to your family. And I'm sure that with your passion and motivation, I'm not going to say the sky's the limit because there's no limitation at all.
There isn't. That's how you move forward. And like I always tell people, if I can do it, so can you.
Until next time, blessings.